Let's get a pulse on the big pharma stocks in light of these developments. And Geoff Meacham is a senior pharma analyst at Bank of America Global Research. And you see the chart of Moderna ahead of you, $242 a share. But it's interesting. It's been quite the roller coaster ride, Geoff, for Moderna this year. It was up as high as, $484 in August. It's dropped nearly 50%, although it's still up over the last 12 months. I mean, this is not a meme stock per se, but a lot of volatility. You've got an underperform rating, I understand, with a price target of $135. Give us a little bit more color on that call.
Yeah, and thanks for having me, and Happy New Year. Yeah, I would say in general, Moderna, we're not saying anything negative about the technology itself. The mRNA technology was quite effective and very rapid to generate, a highly effective vaccine in spikebacks. And I think the company's done a good job and with investing back in the business. Our concern is more in valuation and what are the assumptions longer term for boosters. We just are not of the view that boosters every year from now till the next 15 years are really the way to go here. But that is effectively what's baked into the stock, and so I think that's where we see a pretty big disconnect in long-term assumptions as it relates to COVID boosters.
Why isn't that the way to go? Because it does seem like that's been the playbook early on here. And obviously, I guess there are some other concerns that we can bring in the discussion too around patents and who owns what in all of these things. But it does seem like that's the strategy laid out by the Biden administration is vax, boost, continue to do that until we're out of this. And until we're out of this could be indefinite. So why is that not the way investors should be looking at it?
Well, I mean, I think that I feel like I have to do a lot of a science lesson a bit, when I explain this. But it's perfectly normal to have antibody levels to SARS-CoV-2 or any antigen, go up and then come back down. And so I think that is the situation here. Is that we've now seen that a third shot or one booster is enough to sort of ingrain the immune system to recognize COVID, and then your next exposure. It only takes a few days to get back to, an effective antibody titer level to fight the virus and to fight an infection. So, I think this cycle of boosting every year and then quarantining when you're boosting, to me, that seems like that's so 2020. Looking to next year, I think with the Pfizer oral and to some degree the Merck oral, that'll be, I think, a lot more effective in terms of how, COVID and how we'll be treating it going forward. Have a positive test and then go get, your 5 pills to reduce the risk of hospitalizations or death. So the vaccines have done a great job in limiting, risk of hospitalizations and death, and that should continue. But I would say, there's no study yet, but maybe every 3 to 5 years would be probably a reasonable, regularity with respect to boosting.
You never want to hear anything described as so 2020, but I want to ask about the patent fights, as Zach kind of alluded to earlier. A very important kind of discussion here about who does own the IP here, because it is very lucrative. Moderna is in a fight, I believe it's with the NIH, and then Pfizer's got a whole separate thing going on with their vaccine as well. How do you think that weighs on the outlook for both of those stocks?
Yeah, it's been a lot of conversations that we've had with investors. Unfortunately, there won't really be kind of a tipping point in it. My suspicion is that, it's not just Moderna and Pfizer, but lots of other companies have taken, federal money, from CDC or NIH or wherever to help contribute to the speed of having an effective therapy, like an antibody or a vaccine or even the oral. So it's not unusual to have sort of public-private partnerships to speed things up. But how it plays out, it's really hard to call at this point. My guess is that what you typically see here in the case of two companies going after each other from an IP perspective is a settlement. And I'm not sure, there is that solution here. But I really doubt, though, that you're going to have kind of a, some sort of a really negative outcome as it relates to stripping the IP rights. I mean, these companies did develop these therapeutics in a pretty rapid fashion.
Yeah, and I mean, when we're comparing Moderna and Pfizer, right, obviously underperform rating, neutral rating there. you might point to maybe being a bit more confident about what Pfizer has to offer here. I mean, what do you kind of see when you put these companies up against each other? If it is the case that maybe not as much of a boost is going to come from boosters and vaccines, 3, 5, 10 years down the line, why you're a bit more confident there in Pfizer?
Yeah, I would say, I mean, Pfizer is one that, we warmed up to a little bit here with respect to our price target. But in general, though, when you look to next year and subsequent years, if there is a tail to COVID as it relates to therapeutics overall, be it vaccines or antibodies or orals, to me, it seems like the oral has a little bit more longevity. And that is, because you can stockpile it as long as we don't have any resistance develop from broad use of the orals. I think that could have a little bit longer term of an economic contribution versus the vaccines.
Two different ways to play it there. Appreciate you coming on here to break it all down for us. Geoff Meacham, Bank of America Global Research Senior Pharma Analyst. Happy New Year to you as well.